lost connection.
So my husband's going to help out again today, and he says sometimes it's going to come in and out, especially where we are. So just bear with me and let me know if anything needs repeating. But thank you again so much for all the interactions, all of the extra info everyone's sharing together from their studies on our page. I love it, and keep it coming. So we're in Dover today. We're actually by a ballpark off of Hillside Drive, if you're curious. And so we're going to see some field areas as well as some forest down by some rapid water, which is pretty great as well. We're kind of just going to wing it and see who shows up. And again, I'm going to reiterate the plants we've already met, maybe give you a couple extra tools of insight and ways to use. And I'm going to try to remember to chime in on the medicinal medicines that I make specifically for each plant and how you might do them. And it'll be typically tinctures, salves, poultices, compresses, things like that. But if anything else is coming to mind, you just ask me and I'll hone in on it. I have, was that my phone?
No.
Okay. I'll make sure it's silenced. Okay. I have a bunch of friends right smack dab in the middle here, so I thought we'd start here and then we'll move along, because it is nice to just walk and see how it goes along the trails here. But we have a bunch to see. So I'm at least going to touch upon the guys I'm pretty sure we're not going to see elsewhere, although I could totally be lying. But we're going to start here. Oh man, which one? There's so many staring right at me. Let's start with this friend, this beautiful flowering purple friend here. And oh gosh, this is one of such a beautiful plant and a wonderful one for pollinators. Okay, so we always have to be mindful when we are wildcrafting sustainably that we're keeping flowering friends, especially the early ones. You see all the dandelions kind of spread out as well across the field, that we're keeping them for our pollinators, because it's so important. They come here starving, or they wake up from their nest starving, and they really need to feed themselves. So we don't want to steal from their refrigerator, if you will. So this is ground ivy, and ground ivy has a few lookalikes. Henbit is one, self-heal is another, and it tends to love growing on lawns, but hence the name ivy. It doesn't climb up, but it climbs across. It's almost like a phlox. It really does act like a phlox. So if you ever see flowering phlox on people's yards, this is actually a beautiful wild substitute, and it will take over. That is the thing about a lot of these weeds, is that they absolutely take full charge and spread out as much as they want or are able to. But ground ivy is very aromatic. So there's lots of essential oils in here. It's the aerial parts that I use, so above ground parts. And if you were to rub your fingers or even just take a little bit of the leaf and taste it, it's very reminiscent of like oregano, like the oregano family, which is very indicative of the qualities that it can have in our body. So it's a really wonderful digestive bitter. And it's really awesome as, especially right now, because it's just popping up here, to be added into soups and salads and stir fries. A little goes a long way because of its potent flavor, but it's so wonderful to use. I like to tincture it for bug repellent as well, because it's so aromatic. So you can actually infuse this into oils or just tincture. I mentioned yarrow, I believe, last time, for a nice kind of essential oil free, although of course there are components of essential oils in both the yarrow and this plant that will transfer into the tincture, but it's not as potent for those of us who are scent sensitive. So tincturing and alcohol or even witch hazel and just using it as is as a spray topically for bug repelling is fantastic, or combining it. It's really fantastic for lung health internally. So for asthmatic conditions, sinusitis, like any sort of congestive sinus issue where phlegm needs to be moved out. It's warming, of course, because of its aromatic quality. So it's for colder, damper conditions in the body. And I mentioned digestion, so digestively as well. So if you are thinking of...
wants to know what she missed.
Oh, this is ground ivy, Carol. So this is the first one. You haven't missed much.
Carlina.
Oh, Carlina. Hi, Carlina. So As we, let's see, what else can I say about ground ivy? There's so much to say.
Not that.
We're going to, I'm going to say one more thing about ground ivy, just in case we see it again. I'm sure we'll see it again throughout our weed walk, so I don't want to give everything away early on. But I will say that as a flower essence, it's one of my favorite flower essences. And it was funny because I kind of ignored it. It's a great companion plant, and here I am going on. A great companion plant in the garden if you can kind of keep it under control, especially for like cabbage worms and tomato hornworms. If you leave little patches around, just being mindful, it will take over, so you have to kind of keep it under control. But as an essence, as an energetic flower essence, you can take this plant to help you when you are not being present in the moment, when you are just kind of, you're not happy with what's going on presently, you're just feeling really frustrated or upset, and it's just, you really are sort of fighting against what is, and there's nothing you can do about it in this moment. It helps you to be grounded, to surrender, and just accept where you are, where you're at, whatever's going on, and just know that it will pass. But to kind of just give yourself up to the present moment, and I think all of us can use that from time to time. So it's a nice one for essence form. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna press pause on our friend ground ivy here because there's a lot more to say, but I'm sure we will see her again at some point through this season. And I'm gonna have Erin go off to the right here and focus in on these little narrow leaves as well. Okay, so this is a cousin, or really a sister plant, to Plantago major or plantain, or Plantago regali. We met that last time. So this is just narrow leaf plantain, and I apologize, I can't think of the Latin name off the top of my head. I will post it to the group later. But you don't see this as much, although some people only have this variety in their on their lawns, which is where it likes to grow. Compacted soil is its favorite, and it's used interchangeably with the other Plantagos. So what did we talk about last time? Skin, inflammation, a drawing effect. We talked about the affinity to the mouth, to the teeth, to any sort of heat in the body. Digestively speaking, when you tear this leaf, chew it up, spit it out, you can use it as a poultice, but digestively it has that slimy mucilage inside, so it helps to lubricate and soothe. So for folks who have a leaky gut syndrome, symptoms that are just, even IBS, any irritation, any inflammation, especially in the lower intestinal, and actually even upper too. So for those who have acid reflux, maybe it's trickled up all the way into the esophagus and there might be some scarring. Plantain, especially fresh, this is the best time of year to utilize it, is fresh, is really great. We talked about pureeing our plantain, into little ice cubes and freezing them so that we'd have them for the winter time in the fall, because they don't dry very well, although you can dry them, but you'll see they turn pretty like silverish brown, and they lose their vitality. So as a reminder, it's color, scent, and flavor that we're looking for to make sure that our medicine is potent. And so for whatever reason, plantain just doesn't hold it as much. So skin, emollients, cooling, inflammation internally or externally. It's one of my absolute favorite plants for first aid. Poison ivy, bee stings, even acne can be really soothing just to puree it and use it as a face mask. I like to infuse it into oils for salves, for like a natural neosporin. I use it as, when I oil pull, I infuse it into coconut oil, and I use the infusion of plantain in my oil, so it's like an added bonus of that drawing and healing effect and anti-inflammatory effect on my my teeth and my gums. A really, really awesome ally. All right, so here we go, narrow leaf plantain. All right, let's scoot on over, and I wanted to show you, we talked about how dandelion shaves her legs and chicory does not, which is always a funny sort of analogy that I learned from Susan Weed. That was not something I came up with. But if you look here, to the average person, you might think, oh yeah, that's just a dandelion whorl. and it looks very similar to it because it has that nice whorled shape. But when you lift one of the leaves up, you can see, if you look real close, that the underside has a good amount of fuzz on there. So getting right on in, and you can see the tiny little hairs. Yeah. So this is chicory. So chicory grows very differently. Obviously in the beginning stages you can see it looks very similar to dandelion, and we have a little dandelion patch right here. So you can see the similarity in the leaves. But if you look just behind this dandelion, you'll see these leftover stalks from the chicory that's stuffed right in here. So eventually, right out the center, we'll have a very long and tall stalk, and it'll have beautiful periwinkle, like purplish blue flowers at the top. Will look nothing like dandelion. So you can see the taller leaves starting to sprout out, and it'll go straight up, and it will be indistinguishable. So in the leaf stage, you need to flip the leaves over and just see, is it fuzzy or is it not? Dandelion will not be fuzzy and chicory will. Now granted, they're very similar in action. Chicory is used as a digestive bitter. It has something called inulin in the root, this like milky substance that is it's a type of sugar that feeds the good bacteria in our guts, and it actually primes our gut flora, gives it something to thrive on. So that's a really wonderful digestive aid. It's found in coffee substitutes, paired up with dandelion. Often, like I think it's Ticino is a company that makes a really lovely coffee substitute. So we think about it for digestive, liver support, metabolism, clearing of the gut, just general detoxification is what we have here with chicory. Alright, so let's go ahead and we're going to start walking down here. Get into more of the field. And I think there's some marshy areas down here as well. You can see all the dandelions coming up, which is lovely. All the way down here and talk about a little tree up this hill before we scoot around the corner. I'm going to pause here for just a second because this guy is everywhere right now, and you might be seeing it as well. This is the beginnings of spurge, or actually sweet clover. So I'm gonna have to double check. The leaves are very similar on this plant. So I'm not 100% sure. I wanna say it's sweet clover, but spurge is not edible, so I wanna be 100% sure. And that's very important with weed ID. You always wanna second guess yourself and be 100%. But you can see this popping up everywhere. Sweet clover, if I am correct, is used as a varicosity sort of supporter for just stagnancy in the cardiovascular system, specifically the vasculature. So it would be the aerial above ground plants. The flowers are yellow and almost like they almost look like stalks of wheat, kind of, that kind of shoot up and fern out. They're really lovely. But again, let me double check, because I know that yellow spurge is going to be popping up around here as well, which is really not an edible medicinal at all, but it's a really beautiful ornamental. But I wanted to pause here since it was everywhere and it was kind of yelling at me like, hey, what about me? So I will double check on that one. We've got some mugwort popping up. I'm sure she's going to be there throughout our walk. So, oh, beautiful garter snake. Just scooting on through. I don't want to scare them, but that is where we're headed. Promise we're not following you, bud. As we come up here, you can see all the gorgeous ground ivy that's coming on through this whole area. The yellow and purple is so gorgeous. ask permission, even for samplings. And honestly, I don't remember my trees very well, but I do remember white pine. And white pine, of course, has the 4 needles, so it's a kind of a little ID trick. You spell it P-I-N-E, pine, so white pine. And of course, there's little white, if you can see, there's white on one side, little stripes, and like a fresher green color on the other. And it's a wonderful source of antioxidants in its fresh form. So if you were to tincture this fresh, way more vitamin C than even oranges or spinach. Really high in bioflavonoids, and bioflavonoids are well known for scavenging out free radicals in our bodies, calming inflammation, and astringent. So almost think about this like a rose hip. We're packed with vitamin C, very toning, very soothing. It's also an antiseptic. So if you ever see, this is a relatively young tree. I mean, it's not that young, but there's not enough bark on here to notice that it is oozing any of the sap. But if you did see a tree that had sap on it, you could take it and just warm it in your hands or maybe chew on it, and it acts as a natural band-aid because of its antiseptic properties. So you could put it on a wound. You could actually just chew it as gum. Some people do that. Herbalists like to just kind of play with their wild food. What was the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh, it's a great antiviral. So my favorite way to use white pine, because it's actually quite delicious, as an oximal. So an oximal is a combination of vinegar and honey. So it's a different way to extract the medicinal properties out. Not quite as potent as a regular alcohol-based tincture, but really yummy, and you can use it as salad dressings or marinades, or just take a spoonful of it every day, and it's really lovely, and that way you're getting the fresh active principles out. This would be the time to harvest. And sometimes, you know, again, I always like to reiterate asking permission, making sure there's plenty, giving back, and also noticing if there are vital you know, parts of the plant that have already fallen off, especially with trees, that you don't even have to take from the actual tree. Maybe there's some branches scattered with fresh needles already on it. You know, always keep your eyes peeled for that. The less footprint we make, the better. All right, and there's a whole beautiful grove here of that white pine. Okay. Ground ivy, lots of dock. I'm gonna keep our walk moving, but I know that these guys will pop up again. I'm gonna talk about this plant real quick. It's just another garden, a garden companion, and it's kind of woven into the other grass. But you can see here. You can see it has little little tendrils, little like grabbers, and that is because it eventually starts strangling out other plants. But what's great about this plant, this is vetch, purple vetch. There's also a yellow vetch. Is its nitrogen fixing. Ooh, a little spider friend on me. Is that it's nitrogen fixing in your garden. So if you are in need of nitrogen and you find this vetch strangling out some of your plants, what you can do is just yank it out, kind of chop it up, and just put it back down on the ground as mulch, and it will feed the earth and give it more nitrogen. So it's a natural sort of green fertilizer, if you will, but you do want to pull it up before it flowers. But a really awesome friend for feeding your garden friends. But it will strangle. It will strangle your other plants out if you do not take care of it before it flowers. All right, let's get moving here a little bit further. So this whole area here, as you can see, right behind me, is been hacked away. rightfully so, this is a big plot of Japanese knotweed. We saw them in teeny tiny kind of forms like this on our walking bridge, plant walk. You can see how large they become. So it's often compared to the bamboo family because of the stalks. This is obviously way too big to eat as asparagus at this point, and the medicine just becomes more and more potent. This is a good time to still harvest the root for spring harvest if you like. Make sure you have your muscles ready, because it's a pain in the tuchus to get these babies out of the ground, but it's going to be way easier now in the spring than in the fall, and those are the two times that you would want to harvest the root. You could tincture it. That's typically what I do, is tincture the roots. You have to really scrub them too. They're this orangey color. This is a Lyme's disease plant. And specific to the spirochetes, I'll remind you that it's also packed with resveratrol, which is another really potent antioxidant that's found in the skins of grapes too. So it's like why people are like, oh, I'm going to drink red wine, it's good for me. Same component. Free radical scavengers that just flush us out. So it's good for inflammation as well, and just overall virility of the body. But specifically for Lyme's, again, it searches out those little spirochetes, those little parasitic bacterium, and gets them out of the body, because those are the guys that get lodged, go dormant, and then wake Lyme's disease up years later when you think you've been over it. Antibiotics cannot do that, but this is one of the plants that can, and it's in the root that you would want to use. And you can see this side too, so it's very aggressive. So if you have some on your property, you may as well harvest it. It will be back, because the way that the roots grow, they snap really easily. So a little piece always stays in the ground. It's very hard to completely remove those roots. Little chipmunk village over here. We have these beautiful garlic mustard, almost ready to bloom. I know they're everywhere right now, but such a delicious salad green to eat right now. Right. Barberry. I believe it's a Japanese variety. Again, I'm going to have to double check. You can see that the blooms are starting to form underneath the stem here. They're really beautiful. They're pinky yellow type of coloration. They're gorgeous when they open. If you look real close, you can see that there are thorns on here. So it's very thorny. Very prickly. This is another plant that can be used, and actually people freak out when they see it because supposedly it attracts ticks. But funny thing is that the medicine helps to work as an antibiotic against Lyme disease. So it's another one of those invasives that it actually was introduced as an ornamental, because it is very pretty sort of shrub. But the root, when you dig it up, you can manage it like you would Japanese knotweed. Use the medicine as an antibiotic, combine it with Japanese knotweed if you were dealing with any sort of Lyme's disease or any of its co-infections. Barberry root. You can see there's a leftover berry on this one from last season, right next to a flower. So those are what the berries look like, and often the birds will eat most of them off, but typically it is the root that you that you will go ahead and harvest with your suit on, your suit of armor, so you don't get totally torn up. But it has something called, let's see, actually it has a small quantities, I believe, of berberine, but it's an antibiotic function from the root that really can be used for any type of infection, Anytime you would want to use an antibiotic, this is certainly not as powerful as a pharmaceutical variety, but it has that deep, deep bitter action, and it will kill off all of our gut flora, just like, or a good chunk of it, just like a regular antibiotic will. So it's a nice one to consider if you do not want to go the pharmaceutical route. Obviously, in many situations, we want to go that route because they are more potent, but sometimes we can go without. So having that broad spectrum of medicine is really important to utilize and pick at the right time. So barberry root. You can see there's a ton of it here. It spreads very easily. Let's take a peek along the water side, see if we can't see anything interesting here. And actually, we're stomping on a whole area of plantain. And I mentioned Plantago major and Plantago rugelli, and I had to double check myself, but the rugelli has the purple stem, so you can see that this version has a little bit of reddish purple right in the center. So this is the rugelli. The ones without are the Plantago major. Again, doesn't matter. It's just a, you know, identification specificity for being accurate when you're making your medicines and knowing which plant you used. They're all used the same. Same thing with the narrow-leafed plantain, but here's a nice example of the rugelli for you. Little stomped, but that's where they like to grow. Got lots of dandies. I think skunk cabbage is already come and gone. Actually, earlier. Well, no, it shouldn't be gone yet, but there you can have it. I thought maybe we'd spot them. We have another purple friend on our little lawn area, and this is a wild violet. It's actually a wild wood violet, a little bit different. Actually no, this is the regular violet. This is Viola odorata, just a very tiny one, and of course, you know, depending on where you're seeing these plants grow, it will change their shape and size as well. So sweet violet, beautiful friend. We talked about it for breast health, for dissolving cysts, for flushing out precancerous cells within those cysts. It has that mucilage like plantain does, so it's great for cooling and soothing internally and externally. One of my favorite plants to infuse for breast massage, for low belly massage. We talked about using it as a poultice inside the bra or underwear for, again, breaking up, dissolving fibroids, cysts, growths of all kinds, and drawing, breaking down those cysts, drawing that sort of, really, it's a blockage, a backup of sort of, I hate using the word toxicity, but of buildup the body's trying to get rid of. Really wonderful for soothing the heart, soothing the mind, soothing the heart. It can be used as a wonderful lung remedy as well for irritated coughs that need to be soothed and relaxed. It's a delicious, just spring green. This is the time to harvest the flowers, harvest the leaves. It's the above ground parts that I use, and the more you harvest them, the more fresh greens will come back. So the flowers have a short life, but the leaves will keep coming back fresher and fresher and fresher. Just like plantain, violet, the leaves will get more tough as the season goes on. So you really want to keep that harvest fresh, even just to eat them or add to smoothies. They have a bitter component, which is great for digestion and liver as well. But if you just leave them, they're going to get tough and less delicious. And the medicine will still be there, but it's nice to get that really sort of... it's nice to get that fresh springtime medicine when you are able to. Right. Beautiful little spot. Beautiful ferns back there. Okay. Worked with bluets very much personally. They're kind of a childhood friend. I'd always pick them and give them to my mom as a little girl. But bluets, as a flower essence, can be used for bedwetting. That's like the one thing that I was taught about bluets. And I've yet to make an essence of them myself to see if they have a different message, because that's the cool thing about plants. They will continue to evolve how they offer their, especially spiritual, emotional medicine to us. And so the Native Americans use this plant specifically for bedwetting. So another name for it is piss-a-bed. That's another common name for bluets. So it's the common bluets, and they're just such a lovely little fairy flower. I couldn't pass them without saying at least that about them. When you're taking your walks, you've got your bug spray with you. The ticks have already been spotted. It's actually nice to see the spot maintained. Usually the grass is a lot fuller in this spot. This is obviously the time to harvest your dandelion flowers. Great for infusing into oils for the breast tissue. Pairs beautifully with violet leaf and flower for that same purpose. It's a lymphatic mover. They're great pickles. They're great as fritters. You can coat them in like panko crumbs or tempura crumbs and fry them up. They have some of that bitter latex inside. But really wonderful for just stimulating digestion, supporting liver support and metabolism. They're just so good, and they're just everywhere. They're very prolific right now, so this is the time. We're going to scoot into the woods and see if we can find any woodland friends popping up. So we actually have, let's see, a friend right here. And the leaves look identical to each other. So it could be wild geranium or buttercup. And I'm gonna have to double check this one because literally the leaves are the same. So I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna show you this little sneak peek. I'm gonna follow up on our page here, and maybe some of you already know the difference. But my guess is gonna be wild geranium here. And I'll save some notes on this plant once it's properly ID'd, but this is the beginnings of the one or the other. can see it popping up just about all along the trail here. We have some low bush and high bush blueberries starting here. And what's so cool about this plant is that all of it tastes reminiscent of the berry. So even the leaves have that tangy, sweet, sort of sweet and sour type flavor to it. You can chew it and add it to teas right now. And blueberry, because of its antioxidant component, it actually is fantastic at, again, offering those bioavailable bioflavonoids to flush out the body, but also to regulate blood sugar. So this is a great diabetic supportive herb to help balance out those sugars, the sugar levels for either type 1 or type 2. And specifically, I would say a tea, but you can get whole blueberry extract and just take it like almost like a jam or a preserve. Some companies will make that, but you just utilize the whole plant, berry and flower. The little bell-shaped flowers will start to form, and the leaves, and they all taste like delicious blueberry. Muddy here. Another example of our barberry friend. Here we have the beginnings of goldenrod. And I believe this is the Canadian goldenrod and Solidago canadensis. And this is a really well-known remedy for the kidneys, for strengthening and building kidney support. And it's also the plant that gets blamed for end of the year allergies. But in actuality, and we'll see this as the plant life goes through its, evolves through the season, and we see those flowers, that there's no pollen that actually comes off very easily, like that it could be distributed through the wind. It's the other plant that blooms in the same time, which is ragweed, that actually causes our woes, and not goldenrod at all. So although it's known for its kidney support, it's also known as a wonderful supportive measure for seasonal allergies because it has something called quercetin in it, which is specific antioxidant to help flush out and manage the histamines going on in our body when we're attacked by allergens specifically to the plant and tree population. So it's a bitter, and again, anything that is yellow, indicated with yellow flowers or yellow root or anything with yellow, will always come back to one of the eliminative organs. So in particular, it'll be a liver support, kidney support, and then in a lot of cases, if people have a really deep congested lung issue where there's catarrh, which is like that thick yellowish mucus that's really hard to move, the aerial parts of the plant, so leaf and flower, you'd want to harvest it when it's in bloom, is indicated here as well. And we'll be seeing goldenrod again, so I won't tell you everything about it. And there's a couple different varieties, but this is the Canadian goldenrod. You see some of the starting leaves of those asters I mentioned last time. This is not, I believe this is the woodland white aster. I mentioned the purple ones at our last walk that Jim McDonald uses a lot for bronchial issues and lung stuff. This is just a different kind of aster I've not used medicinally, but is so important for the pollinators. It's like their last meal before they make their commute or they go back down into the earth or perish. All right, well, I have to mention these guys. These have been popping up throughout our whole walk. And funny thing about the blackberry and raspberry family is that to this day, over 13 years of practicing as an herbalist, I still find black raspberry plants that don't have 5 leaves and vice versa. So when I was first told about differentiating those two plants, blackberry and red raspberry, I was told red raspberry only has 3 leaves, or leaflets, because this is actually a single leaf, but 3 components, and that the black raspberry or blackberry would have 5. And I've seen that not to be true in all cases, so I never trust going on the leaf structure alone, and I usually wait for the berries. Not to say that either are toxic. You can absolutely eat the berries of blackberry, of black raspberry, and regular raspberry. They all are packed with antioxidants, and actually a wonderful array of chemical constituents to flush cancerous cells from the body, so they're a really wonderful preventative aid for malformed cells. I am going to say that I am feeling like this is red raspberry only because of this bristly, almost hair-like, spiny, sharp thorns at the bottom. I don't see that with black raspberry or blackberry a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and say this is red raspberry, but I'll have to come back and double check for us. The only difference between the black and red raspberries is that red raspberry is really known for its leaf more so than the black raspberry and blackberry. This, I'm sure you have all heard, it's a wonderful tonifying plant specifically for the female reproductive system, but really systemically. So it's toning, it's tightening, it's for the loose, lax tissues of the body, even topically for our breast tissue or for our facial skin. It helps to tighten, soothe, tone. Rich in minerals, rich in iron and calcium. It's a really wonderful sort of multivitamin herb added to stinging nettle tea, if you like. It kind of tastes like black tea, so I really enjoy it as a substitute for even chais. Sometimes you can kind of combine it and add your chai spices. It's a really nice blend. But the leaves are used predominantly for the red raspberry leaf for this purpose. And of course you enjoy the berries any old time. Now for blackberry and black raspberry that look very similar to this, only they supposedly have 2 more leaves and don't have as much of this bristly thorns, but more sporadic all the way on up. The roots are used for those plants for astringent properties, but more specifically to digestive concerns where diarrhea are concerned, or even hemorrhage in the body are concerned, maybe even hemorrhoids and bleeding from the digestive tract, even ulcers, things like that. Very toning and astringent, but it's the dried root that would be used there. My favorite way to use the red raspberry though is the leaf as a tea, fresh or dried. And the other component that again is not always true for this plant is that the back side is more silvery, which is not seen here at all. And it could be that the plant is too young at this point, but typically it's a silvery gray on the flip side of our red raspberry. All right. I keep spooking all the chipmunks. Is so calm. Usually I come here and it's super loud and racing.
a second.
Really pretty example of that library. I always forget to look up. This is a huge example of our white pine. Hoping to see some white oak too. We'll see if we come across any. Let's take a moment and just pause next to this beautiful friend here. These guys down here, these beautiful, they're not really star-shaped, but they are reminiscent of a starburst. As they bloom, they actually form two little white stars. They're gorgeous. And here, I'll get a little close-up here of this guy. So this is starflower, and this is in the primrose family. And it can be used similarly to evening primrose, but I reserve it for the flower essence. And it's really about working with our shadow selves and digging deep into the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't see as strengths. And it helps us to realize how to utilize them for our highest and best self, and to kind of not shove them down beneath the surface, but to be empowered by them. So it's a really beautiful plant for just, empowering oneself, all sides of ourselves, the things that we may look at as negative and or positive. So star flower, again, in the primrose family. I'm sorry, I keep making you go up and down. I'm happy to go over if this is a pain. So this little plot sometimes can be, and just so you know, this is not poison ivy. People always freak out. It's poison ivy. It's not. This is a ground growing raspberry that I don't know. I haven't worked with, so I'm not going to talk a lot about, but don't be nervous. It is not poison ivy, although it does exist around here. Okay, back to this little friend. So this is often misidentified as wintergreen, but it is partridge berry, Michella repens, and you can see there's a little leftover berry back here, and it's so tiny. It's not a very good example, but if you were to try to focus in on it, you can see two tiny little dots on either side. Almost looks like nostrils on the berry, and that's an indicator of where these two little white flowers were to form the berry. And this is one of my favorite, most beautiful signatures of the plant world, because it's talking about two flowers creating one berry. So what do you think that is an indicator for? It's an indicator for fertility and for the childbearing years. And the native traditions use it specifically for helping to avoid miscarriage or loss of child throughout pregnancy, and helps to really nourish and tonify the reproductive system for women. So partridge berry, squaw vine's another name, but squaw was kind of a name, a derogatory name used by Native Americans for ladies of the night, if you will, squaw. So partridge berry was taken over for that. So really beautiful friend. This is on the at-risk list though for the United Plant Savers, so I don't really harvest it very often. You can see there's a small patch here. It's not real big, so you want to be real mindful about this friend, making sure that we're letting it continue to spread widely for, hopefully for use down the road when it's safer to do so. But I do tincture it, so tincture would be the way that it would be used best. And here's an even bigger example. The leaves are a lot larger here, just to kind of get a varying shot of those leaves, much more robust spot of partridge berry. definitely gonna say this is probably wild geranium just because there's so much of it and it likes to be in the wooded area. So just a refresh, but I will double check that because buttercup is very, very similar, and buttercup is toxic. Wild geranium is not. An important distinction there. Go ahead. How would you want to? On your watch. Okay. Let's go back out to the fields here. Our woodland friends take a little bit longer to wake up. There's a lot of repeats out here. It's still nice to see. How lovely this area is. It's really so nice stuff here. This is a huge muddy spot. See if we can get across without ruining our shoes. Alright, I'm gonna have us go this way, but it looks like it's waterlogged, so let's scoot up this way and back through the woods. I believe, I apologize, I can't recall who asked this question last time, but this is a perfect spot. It's very moist here, where jewelweed likes to grow, and we did see a little patch of jewelweed down by the river at the mills last week, and so I see a patch here, and I will say, kind of as a word of caution, that wherever jewelweed grows, poison ivy is just around the corner. So they grow hand in hand, which is great because jewelweed is used for poison ivy relief, especially in its fresh form. So if you want to come closer, and you can see it's starting, luckily I don't see any poison ivy quite yet, but these funny little guys are the start. And you can see that even some of them are tinier right in here. So they just have 4 leaves on them, and they're very, very small. They have a see-through stem, purpley see-through stem, and that's another sort of, at this stage, it's nice to kind of keep your eyes peeled. But even just kind of circulating around the back, you see these big rounded stems and leaves. These are all the jewelweed babies, and they are water-loving. I love jewelweed for any skin irritation at all. So it doesn't have to just be poison ivy. It can be any rash, eczema, psoriasis, sunburn, great sunburn remedy. It's very soothing and cooling. It does help to dry out and draw out poison ivy rash. And when I say that, I'm reminded of plantain. So plantain can be used in combination. I will say that the fresh is best and right away. So let's say I did go ahead and touch some poison ivy in there and I mistook that other plant for it. Well, I would want to immediately crush up some jewelweed and rub it on the areas of my body that I thought, had made contact with it. So fresh tincture is the best way to get that medicine and, and store it for long-term use. You could certainly do the ice cube method for that. Some people do infuse it into oil. I do think alcohol extract is better because with poison ivy in particular, you want to dry it out. You don't want to moisturize it because that will just lead to more spreading. You want to dry it out completely. So, maybe even adding some of the tincture with some bentonite clay and making it into a paste as, with the tincture. So the tincture of jewelweed with some clay and then using it as a pack like that, almost like you would with calamine, but it's your own bentonite jewelweed sort of recipe there is a good way. So jewelweed babies abound, and I'm sure poison ivy is probably right underfoot. And poison ivy grows where, boundaries are needed. Oh, cute little toady. Hey, guy. So nice to see all these friends popping out. Hibernation. So often we'll see poison ivy in straight lines along sides like this to create that boundary for, you know, areas that are overtrodden. So it's neat to be mindful of. Wow, 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 is it muddy? Right. I'm mindful of my footing here. Did not wear my galoshes. I should have. More goldenrod out back here. I'm gonna pluck up, see if I can't pluck a leaf and not make my hubby come into the mud over here. So this is a plant that we've walked across a few times, and this is cinquefoil, and there's lots of different kinds of cinquefoil. And it is known as an astringent topically. Again, it could be used in a combination with jewelweed or plantain and for that component, or even for sore throat gargles. I'm just making sure I can hone in if I'm showing you guys. I'm too close.
You're fine.
Okay, great. Thanks, honey. But magically speaking, any five-fingered plant, in particular this one, is used for communication. So it's a really cool ally when you feel like you're having a hard time communicating in general, or maybe you have a hard conversation coming up with someone and you really want it to go over well. Maybe you're asking for a promotion, maybe you got in a fight and you're trying to smooth over the edges. Whatever it is, you can call on this ally for help. You can create an essence. You can carry it as a talisman in your pocket. You know, if you're writing an email, you can stuff it underneath your laptop or your mouse, whatever, or not your mouse, but maybe your keyboard. And it helps to communicate. It connects us to our abilities to fully and kind of tap into that highest good of all communication, so that everything comes out the way that you intend it, with love. So it's a really cool plant. It's also a plant that helps us to communicate to the natural world more easily. So if you're wanting to get into plant and animal communication more, this is an ally that you can work with. It's a really cool friend, and it will have beautiful little yellow flowers, almost like the buttercup, but much smaller, and it grows in, you know, sort of lawn type areas. But look for the five fingers. They all look very similar to this. All right, let's continue on. I guess we have had a lot of rain. There's a lot of stuff going on around him. But this guy, the curly leaves, this is yellow dock, or Rumix crispus, also called curly dock. And particularly for me, I use the root medicine. Although in the spring, you can absolutely eat these leaves, cook them, and they taste a little bit like sour grapes or like rhubarb type flavor. And it's a really wonderful ally for mineral absorption. So if you're someone who goes to the bathroom and looks back at their stool and it's kind of maybe on the yellower side and maybe food particles in them, not really fully formed so well, this is a great herb for soothing that digestive tract and making sure that you are really fully breaking down your foods and absorbing them properly. It's great for people who are anemic, for women who are pregnant who need more uptake of iron. It does have iron in it, but it's not, it's more well known for the ability to help assimilate your foods. It's a gentle laxative, so for those with chronic constipation, it pairs really well with dandelion and burdock. for again the alterative properties of resetting the digestive tract, supporting the liver function, even supporting gallbladder function and spleen. So think of all the eliminatory organs getting toned and sort of, almost like a reset button has been hit. This herb, this plant, particularly the root, will do that for us. I mentioned, I believe, an herbal coffee that I like to make. This has the yellow dock root, burdock root, and dandelion root. And you just make it into a strong tea overnight. Add milk of your choice, sweetener of your choice. And it's really wonderful for getting all those things back up and functioning. Similarly to burdock, you think of it for the skin. So liver and skin are intimately connected, as well as digestion, which goes very hand in hand with elimination. And so for psoriasis, for rosacea, for inflammation, even for acne, teenage acne, things like that, when hormones are an issue and they're out of whack, PMS, liver herbs, digestive herbs, yellow dock should be on that list for you. Really wonderful aid for heated conditions in the body and helps to regulate. So it's that alterative energy of regulation. It's not a laxative that is, like coffee or something that kind of exhausts your gut, exhausts your colon. It actually helps to tone it, but just stimulates that peristalsis, muscular activity a little bit more to move things out. And I know, let's see, I think I see some St. John's wort here. I just want to be mindful. I am mistaken, I believe. Mistaken. All right. Just kidding. No St. John's wort. I hope it is. Is it better in the middle? Flip-flop inside? Yeah, good idea. Oh my gosh. Scoop back through here, scoot up through one more wooded patch, and we'll call it a day. But this wasn't on my list to come back to this in our series, but maybe I will, just because there's really so much that is just barely coming up. It might be worth our while to revisit. Okay, well, this will be our last friend. So this is a really cool plant. We've got some baby jewelweed again, just to point out here, these little guys. This is a really cool friend to continue to notice from this very small stage all the way up, you know, through August when it's going to be really tall, like at least 6 to 12 inches tall here, maybe even taller. This is wild lettuce. This is one variety. There are several species, but this is one that is most well known. And talk about latex. We talked about the white sap that dandelion has. So wild lettuce has even more latex in it. And latex not only dissolves things, but it also acts as a nervous system relaxant, a literal sedative. So wild lettuce is very potent for relaxing the nervous system to the point of sleep. So if you are someone who has really heavy duty insomnia, and I would not use this if you are pregnant, and probably not if you are an elder person or child. I would go with some other remedies first. You would use the aerial parts, the leaves. You could dry them, or you could use them fresh. And you can actually even, eat a couple leaves, especially during this time of year. But the latex acts as a really potent sedative, but also pain reliever. So if pain is a component to your insomnia, that's a really wonderful way to incorporate both from one herb. Very bitter, obviously. Bitter is going to have some act on the digestive tract and the liver function as well. I do find that when you work with wild lettuce, it also encourages vivid dreaming, not in the same way that mugwort would, but it makes you have very clear dreams where maybe you're even able to be lucid within them. So kind of a little side note on taking wild lettuce, but a really potent, powerful friend for pain relief and for sedative action. So this is not something you would want to take during the day or before driving. This is before bed, a really strong ally and friend. And hopefully we'll see another couple examples of wild lettuce as it grows, because it looks completely different at every stage of growth. So I was talking about how I thought I saw St. John's wort and then I didn't. Well, he just seems to want to be the end of the show for the last couple walks. So here we go, a slightly larger plot of St. John's wort here. You can see the reddish starting. So that's the hypericum, or the hypericin, building in the plant. And eventually, as it gets much taller, it'll have those beautiful yellow flowers that when you crush them will have that red oozy hypericum come out. And that's the medicine that we want specifically for nerve damage. So we talked a lot about it being that it creates photosensitivity if you drink and take a lot of the plant, if you're already sensitive to the sun. But topically infused into an oil and used as a block for the skin, it actually works in the opposite direction and helps to protect from sun damage and sunburn. It makes it a really nice choice for after sun care, whether you're making a tea, whether you infuse it into witch hazel and apply it, or even aloe vera and use it as an after sun spray or a sunburn spray, which is really lovely. It is most well known for trauma of the nerves, so damaged nerves from anything at all. Specifically to MS, when the myelin sheath, which is the coating that kind of it grows around the nerve endings, that is what breaks down with that condition. And when you if you combine St. John's wort and nettle together, because nettle is a very potent nerve rebuilder as well, this more for the specific damage, nettle for the regenerative, I can't speak right now, you know what I mean, rebuilding energy of nettle, combine them and it helps to rebuild the myelin sheath of damaged nerves of all kinds, but even in particular for MS, people struggling with MS. Beautiful friend. We're going to see this grow really fast. Its peak will be in another month or two, but really cool to see it again in its tiny form. All right, we're going to make our way back to the parking lot and see if there's anyone else to chat about, but I think that might be the close. is it for our walk. Special thanks to my hubby who trudged through the mud with me this morning. I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to wash our feet. If you have questions, don't hesitate. Again, keep up the awesome interaction on our page, and I will see you guys next time. Have a beautiful Wednesday.